few weeks ago, I received this brief video footage of students being arrested at University of Liverpool campus. These are the students who call themselves the Students of Alareer Square, and they have an encampment on campus in solidarity with people of Gaza and Palestine. Here is the footage that was shared with me.
The officer him pushed me over with him.
What are you doing, man? What are you doing? Why are you touching him like
What are you doing? Get off!
What the hell?
You must arrest a peaceful protester! Let go of her now!
That's the last time. Do it again on the rest of the police. Do you understand? Carry on. You're under arrest.
So after seeing this footage, I reached out to a mutual friend with the hope that I could speak with some of the students who are either part of the encampment or who were actually being arrested in the video that you just saw. So thankfully, 3 of the students from the encampment, 2 of whom who were actually arrested that day, agreed to speak with me. So this video then is my conversation with students of Alareer Square. So thank you all so much for joining me today to elaborate on what you have been doing in solidarity as the students of Alareer Square at the University of Liverpool campus. And I'm deeply grateful that you have taken the time to join me, and I'm pretty sure people watching this will absolutely be thrilled to hear your voices from the actual, so to speak, the trenches of this fight for social justice and for the rights of Palestinian people. So to start the conversation, my first general question is, how did you come up with, or what prompted you to actually physically, as the students at a university, to put your bodies out there in solidarity with Palestinian people? What was your thought process, but also what prompted you to do such a noble act?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Masood. Really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
What's happened for 7 months, 8 months, we've been seeing what's been happening in Gaza, attending weekly marches, and we saw no real concrete outcome from them. And going to the same institution every day and seeing how complicit this institution was, we all individually felt that there needed to be some change. So we started asking around, is there anything happening? We saw what was happening in America, and it was starting to happen here as well in a few universities. And then a few of us and a few other people got together and decided to form an encampment, because we realized that we can't stay complicit by proxy through our university. And now we're on this encampment trying to make some active change. I'd also answer your question to the noble thing. I don't think it's so noble, but we're just, we're living in tents, but in Gaza, there are families, 10, 20 people in one tent, and they're being bombed every single day. This is nothing compared to that. This is, we're trying our best, but sorry, guys. You go.
No, I'd just say on that, it's not so much a noble act as it is a necessary act. I think it's our responsibility as people who are privileged enough to not have bombs dropping on us every day, to fight the imperialism at home so that it doesn't spread its tentacles and affect people elsewhere in the world. So it's just the necessary thing we have to do. And yeah, that's what I had.
And I mean, we wake up to the sound of seagulls and rain. And the people in Gaza, the people in Rafah, they wake up to the sound of bombs. There's the sound of drones, above them at all times. So I feel that what we're doing here, it's really the bare minimum, and I think we all feel that we all wish that we could do more. But here we are, and as we always say, we won't be moved until this university recognizes that it is complicit in the genocide of the Palestinian people, and does all it can to rectify that. If there is, it is too late, but action must be taken.
And if I can quickly build on that as well, like obviously our fight currently is with the university, but the fight more broadly is for a free Palestine. So we get the university to meet our demands. The protests don't stop. Like I think the students have awoken a kind of protest movement that needs to continue, that needs to be bigger than our relationship to universities. This is just the first step in that process of like actively dismantling every single way in which like anything around us is complicit in the genocide.
Oh, thank you so much. So let me correct myself. By noble, I didn't mean that it's an amazing act. Nobility to me is when we, as human beings, let go of our immediate personal interests and reach out in solidarity to work with others, right? Not speak for them, but with them. And that in itself is a noble act because it's not geared by your self-interest. That's the sense in which I use the term. But obviously, you and me, we all know that whatever we do in this fight for justice, equality, and humanity of the Palestinian people is necessary and absolutely must be done. So thank you for your thoughts. Now, could you share a little bit of how you all started? What is your decision-making structure? How do you function every day in solidarity with each other? Because here is the thing. What the mainstream media does is, since it thinks in hierarchical terms, here in America, what they do is they put the camera on one or two people and here are the leaders of the protest, right? And what we are trying to dispel as scholars and activists is that, no, this is a collectivist movement. There is no junta at the top telling people what to do, right? So could you explain the democratic and egalitarian methods that you use to mobilize and still use to make your collective decisions?
On that point, I think it relates back to what you said about nobility. It's like we live in a society where there is this notion that everything has to be hierarchical, everything has to be about individuals, everything has to be internal to yourself. I think the organization of our camp is actively trying to work towards dismantling that system. We operate so that we have 2 daily meetings a day at like participatory meetings, so like everyone kind of collectively gathers and everyone has a voice and everyone can have a say in the functioning of the camp. Obviously, kind of to get people to have to get the camp to function, there are groups within that the camp. So like we have a well-being team, we have a security team and things like this, but those teams don't supersede the power of the group at any point. It's always about the collective. It's always about the well-being of everyone in the camp primarily, and then those groups work in service of that.
That's great, thank you. And so coming to the naming of your encampment, when I was reading up on it, it was referred to as Alareer Square. So for our audience, could you tell us, the history and the reason for, like students here at Columbia also renamed a hall as Hind Square, right? Hind Hall. So what was your reasons and who is it named after, right?
Yeah. So the square is named after Palestinian poet and activist Rafit Alareer. He was killed in an Israeli airstrike a few months back. I believe it was in January, and we decided that we would honor his memory by renaming the square Alareer Square. Rafit, before he died, before he was murdered, he wrote a poem, and I encourage anyone listening to read that poem, and it's called If I Must Die. He wrote that poem for his daughter Shayma, who was killed in April by an Israeli airstrike. And the consensus of the poem is that if I must die, you must live to tell my story. So he wrote that poem for his daughter, and he wrote that poem for his grandchildren. His grandson, Shaymat's son, was also killed in the Israeli airstrike that claimed the life of his mother. And we just think that, you know, he wrote that poem for them, and the whole thing was that, you know, they must live on. So in us renaming the square, we hope that, you know, we can honor his wishes and remind people that we won't forget, and we'll keep their memory alive.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a pretty moving account. So now coming to your struggle, and how has the community, the university, but also the neighboring community, how have they responded to your efforts and your struggle?
I was going to say the wider Liverpool community, they've been through a lot of their own struggles. Most the toxic riots in 1981, of course, so they have their own political struggles against the state and so on. So they've been really, really supportive. We've been given tents, money, food every single day to keep the camp going. We've engaged with the community in terms of holding vigils on camp, holding like Palestinian events and music events, and just engaging with the wider community. So we know what they want and they know what we want. It's a symbiotic relationship. There is a synergy between us and them, and we're fighting the same cause. Like you mentioned, imperialism obviously is at the heart of this. That the university itself has been a bad faith actor in terms of how they've engaged with us. I'll let you guys expand on that. So
yeah, the community has been completely and utterly incredible. They've rallied behind us, and their support has been unwavering, because in a way I think that our you know, need to see an end to this, to see what we you know, open our phones to every day. You know, we all heard like Hind Rajab on the phone to the Palestinian Red Crescent. You know, we never want to see that happen to another child again, and I think collectively as human beings we all agree on that, and I think that's sort of why the community has really stood with their support, and it is unwavering, as I said. Yeah.
And unfortunately, the university, like the university as a thing, as a kind of collective, the teachers, the staff, the other students, they've been incredible. They've been wonderful. The senior leadership team, that thing about we said again about like the hierarchy and the way the society is structured, the senior leadership team were awful. They treated us with a complete lack of respect. They treated us as if we were children, as if we didn't know what we were doing, as if we didn't understand the cause we're fighting for. Like there was a way in which because we were previously in negotiations, they since have ended negotiations. But even in those negotiations, even in that space where you're meant to be sharing a platform and having that mutual dialogue where you're trying to build a better university for the rest of the people in it, even in that space, they still repeatedly acted as if they were doing us the favor. They were helping us, and it wasn't about Palestine. It wasn't about like what we were fighting for. It was about them sitting in a room and having to listen to students because we'd been a bit noisy. That was the attitude we were met with. And yeah, I think the point of the protests is to get like them into a situation where they not only kind of give in to our demands, but they truly and deeply understand the cause we're fighting for. Like this is not just like oh hey, like we're in the room because you kind of forced us to be here. It's like we're in the room because there's a genocide happening.
Thank you for sharing that, because here in the US too, the response from university administrations was deeply patronizing. and even from the media, because they somehow want to impugn onto the students a certain kind of naivety, right? They want to say that, oh, these people do not really know what's going on in the world and they are naive and misguided, not realizing that the young people are seeing. I mean, this is not something happening in secret. They are watching the starvation and destruction of a people right in front of their eyes, and and then responding to that, not reacting to that, but responding to that in solidarity. And it took a while here in the United States for larger public to realize what was going on. And had the students not put their bodies and their words out there, right, it probably would have taken longer for the general public to be aware of that. So that's why your presence in that encampment and on campus, I think it's absolutely important and crucial. Now, coming to that, the footage that people have seen about the police presence on your campus, could you share with us? I think two of you were also arrested amongst the students who were arrested. Could you share with us what prompted the university to call the cops on campus, and then what you experienced for the larger audience here in the United States and rest of the world, please?
Yeah, before these guys say, because they can speak really well on this, I would say, just going back to the negotiations bit, and this leads into your question, is that the university is in a sense of like cognitive dissonance, where everything we say just doesn't go and it's an attack. Well, what we're trying to do is improve this university, because we named it after a poet, a teacher, because we want this to be an educational institution that teaches students coming in about what's right and what's wrong, because that's what education is about. It's about learning. And the university, the way it's reacted to us, and I'm sure these guys will expand on that, has been abysmal, abhorrent.
And I want to expand on that point. I think it's important to mention that at the beginning of these negotiation meetings, that actually senior leadership refused to call negotiations. They call them an open dialogue. You know, members of the negotiation team would start the meeting by giving an update on Gaza and Rafah, and you know, it would be the most heart-wrenching, horrific accounts, you know, things that no human being should ever experience. And members of SLT would completely, you know, sit there and you know, scroll on their phone. It was completely disregarded, and you know, even just scoffed at as if it was sort of an inconvenience to listen to. So
So you saw like their response was not even, what to talk of empathetic, not even human, right?
Yeah,
To the atrocities that they were
yeah.
seeing. Okay.
Speaking to
Okay.
some of the people around, we were just engaging in conversation about what this institution represents, and we see it as an expansion of this colonial entity that's been superimposed onto this educational institution, where the university is a plantation. These people are the colonizers, and the students are now rebelling against this. But the only way that the university as an institution knows how to stop the students is violence, just like a colonizer. That's all they can do. They could engage with us and be productive, and we could reach really good conclusions and make the university a better place for everyone. But the university, coming to your question, chooses to engage in violence.
I think that's exactly it. That like understanding that the
Okay.
university speaks through the language of violence,
Yeah.
because the way in which the actual kind of like leading up to the arrest, what actually happens is at every stage, the university has an option, an opportunity to de-escalate the situation, to communicate with its students. So like running through the events leading up to the initial arrest, it's a protester draws on the wall with chalk, writes from the river to the sea. So then a member of the university comes over to them, and instead of attempting to de-escalate the situation, basically says, oh, you're going to get nicked for that. The police are going to come. And then you see police officers come, and they don't. There's no member of the university, no security, no one who tries to step in and go, actually, no, like I thought it was spray paint, I thought it was this, but it turns out it's chalk. Nobody steps in. And at every single point, from the point at which the act is done, like, again, this is chalk we're talking about, to the point where, like, protesters are being arrested, does any member of the university try and de-escalate the situation? Because fundamentally, they were concerned about, like, oh, what happens if there is a disruption on open day? But they were so overly concerned about it, and they only speak through this language of violence, that they ended up causing the disruption themselves. They ended up being the disruption because they were so paranoid that we were going to do something, that they ended up trying to forcibly prevent even the most minor of things. Again, this was chalk we're talking about.
Okay, so anything else?
Yeah, so basically it was the last thing on anybody's mind at that moment, that there would be a police presence at all. And you know, the chalk was drawn on the wall, literally children's chalk, and it just said "Free Palestine from the river to the sea." You know, we were all standing there, and in the blink of an eye, we start to hear, you know, running footsteps. We all turn around, and there's a matrix van and 12 police officers charging at us. Um, and you know, at one point I saw campus support, campus security, and I thought, oh great, amazing, they've come to help their, you know, their students. They have, you know, they're here to de-escalate. And he charged past me and elbowed me in the chest, and at that moment I knew that this university not only consented to its students being brutalized, but even campus support, you know, they sort of just, it's like all their anger, all their frustration that they've been pent up for, that they've had pent up for the past 6 weeks, they just wanted to unleash on us, and found their perfect opportunity with the police. And it's almost as if they were excited to do it, and very, very, not just willing, but excited. Yeah.
I think it's worth saying, like, before all this happened, there's normally one police officer on campus who's responsible for everything that happens at the university. And he came over to us and he said, you guys better behave yourself tomorrow, because other police officers, they're not as nice as me. And in light of actually being arrested and like obviously all the violence that happened on campus, it's hard not to see that as a threat. Like, that is just an outright threat going, you guys better behave, or the, like, strong arm of the law is coming down on you. And it did.
Yeah.
Speaking of threats, I just want to, you know, mention that in the early weeks of the encampment, this police, the campus police, came up to a group of girls and said to us, to 4 girls, that come to me when you get raped. I have a daughter. And it, you know, 4 girls and campus police comes up to you and says, come to me when you get raped. It felt like a complete threat, and just, you know, it was crazy. And I think that just illustrates the sort of people that this university is employing to quote, keep us safe. It's shocking.
And that's so sad too, because, you know, these are the people who are trained to protect the students, right? We saw that here in United States too, like, you know, when the counter protesters attacked the participants of the protest, I think it was on the UCLA campus, and the cops just stood there, didn't even try to save the students who were being beaten up right in front of them. And that kind of tells you the mindset and complicity of police forces and the upper administrations in the violence being enacted against the students who who are in encampments or in the protests. And also, in a way, I've seen it, how people are being treated for taking a stand for Palestine, right? May it be semiotic or material, like you all are doing on a college campus. But I am so grateful that you all are still there. Now, you already mentioned it, but if you were to say, this is where we stand, these are our demands of our university, what would it be if you were to succinctly state it?
We want our university to divest entirely from any arms companies, anything that relates it or ties it to the genocide. We want them to be transparent about what they're investing and what they're researching and who they're researching with. We want them to be part of the rebuilding process. We want them to be part of ensuring that when like all of this is over, and even during while it's happening, that they're making a stand. They're saying, actually, the most simple of things, really. They're saying genocide is wrong. We stand with Palestine. That they are trying to offer scholarships. Like, these are fundamental, basic kind of like, they should be kind of human things. They should be like natural. But those very simply are our demands. They're not complex. They're not kind of bureaucratic. They're human.
Great. Anything else?
Yeah, I think Casa said it very well, that we're not trying to change something that's so massive here. We're trying to ask for the most basic, fundamental human things. But it feels like every day we have to teach the university how to be human, and how the SLT members how to be humans. And they can see us as petulant children. But I think what I've learned to this encampment is that the most basic things of being a human is caring and looking after the people around you. And the university just can't do that. They are so worried about money and profits and so on that anything else just doesn't matter. So when it's genocide or murder, they'll teach those things at the university in 20 years. They will do that because then that will bring them profits, but they won't talk about it now. And that's what we're trying to change. This can't be allowed to continue. We can't exist in a system like that.
Members of the negotiation team have said to SLT that in 20 years' time, when this genocide is condemned, and it's said to be one of the most shameful periods of human history, putting up a plaque, putting up a bench, a sign, renaming, the square, Alareer Square, officially, it will be too late. And we've said this to them, and we reiterate it to them, that it will be too late. And we never want it to get to that point, and we won't let it get to that point, because if it's not us, if it's not this group of students, it will be the next group of students. This hasn't started with us, and it won't end with us. I think the university has to recognize that this isn't just a group of students that will disappear once they graduate or once they move on somewhere. This is a thing of, we are here, even if it's not us specifically, we are here and we will not be moved.
Thank you. And finally, any message for people like us here, for the students in the United States, rest of the world? Any final words that you would like to share as people who are actually right now fighting in solidarity with the people of Gaza and Palestine?
Yeah, I would just say solidarity to everyone that's fighting, because we know it's hard. It's every single day, and it's probably going to continue for the rest of our lives. But it's important, and we should do it together, and we are doing it together. So thank you, and thank you for doing this. Yeah.
Thank you all so much, and I'm really deeply grateful, and I wish you all continuous success and in solidarity and peace. Whatever it's worth, my support will always be there with you. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Free Palestine.
Palestine.
Palestine. Hold on.
After we concluded our interview, the students shared with me a longer and more detailed reflection of their experience with the police. And I'm adding it here as an addendum to our whole interview. I hope it clarifies their experience a bit more for you.
So, with respect to the police presence on the campus of the University of Liverpool, the 22nd of June 2024, we just wanted to recount some of the events of the day. So, personally, that morning I had woken up at around 7 a.m. on the camp, and I saw police officers, patrolling around the square in twos. At some points, they would even come into the camp and read the posters that I personally put up. Some statistics like that are completely heart-wrenching, and I thought that maybe it was getting through to them because they seemed to really, really be into reading those. Looking back, I now realize that that was just a guise for, trying to listen in on our conversations and wait for their opportunity to brutalize us. Some of the statistics that were on the stand were like 2 mothers are killed every hour in Gaza, and that is a UN Women statistic. And the particular police officers that were reading those statistics were 2 women, who later that day were some of the most brutal against us students. So anyway, I'm gonna fast forward to around midday when one of my comrades decided to chalk "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free" on the wall of our library. Again, this was in chalk, children's chalk that can be easily wiped off with some water. So basically, he did that and came into the camp, and we all just congregated. We were making lighthearted jokes, and the next thing we know, we heard running footsteps and turned around to 12 police officers charging at us. I mean, this was before, before this, obviously, there was the police liaison that was speaking to the protester that wrote "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." And basically, he said that they have to investigate, and we were very, very willing to help him investigate. So we all grabbed a bottle of water and passed it to him and said, "Here you are. We'll come with you, and we will wipe this chalk off the wall." And he seemed willing to do that.
No, he just suddenly changed his mind as we were walking over and grabbed this one member and just tried like pulling them to the ground. And then it just started, and they were just like, it was just a barrage of police officers everywhere. It was a small number of people on camp that day. It was early morning, or well, around midday. And it was around 8 of us that day, and like 12 police officers came in. And after that, they started pushing us back. We weren't even doing anything, just standing around, just saying, "Let the person go. They haven't done anything wrong. We can go wipe the chalk off." And they just kept pushing people around, like obviously grabbing people's phones off of them and grabbing people's wrists, especially girls. They were, you know, much more aggressive towards. Yeah. And after that, the police took the person that they detained, took that person outside and walked right across the wall where the supposed evidence was of chalk, and then just sat the person down, formed a wall around them, and then just, started basically trying to manipulate them into giving their details. I think you can expand more on that, to be honest.
Yeah, so the police attempted many times to kind of force a protester to give information about themselves regarding like their name and their like address under the guise of kind of, we're investigating this crime. At this point, it's already evident to them that it's chalk. There is no reason for them to need those details. They're saying to the protester that none of these details are going on the system. So it's like, they're not going on the system. We know that there's no crime committed. I think what's kind of being shown here is that what we experienced that day was the most punitive and most kind of pathetic version of the arm of the law, the most pathetic response to these Palestine encampments, to the Palestine movement, because what we're seeing is a state and a international system that's increasingly scared of what this movement is capable of. And at moments where the people show that they have power, repressive forces, oppressive state forces in particular, come down and they try and punish you for anything. As Perry already mentioned, the police were there all day on campus, waiting for something to happen. They were looking for an excuse to arrest us. And when they're looking like that, it's not because they hold this great amount of evidence and they know something's going to occur. It's because they're scared of what the power this movement has, the capacity we have to make change.
Yeah. I just wanted, I remember because we were all there. As soon as the police tried to take that one person away, everyone formed a line around this van, and the police would just cut through those young students like a hot knife through butter, and it would just I can't put it into words how violent it was to see and how easy it was for 12 6 foot something police officers to cut through these young students. And after that, they just started brutalizing. And campus security, who I'll find a quote from our deputy vice chancellor. This is the quote where it says, "I particularly want to thank campus support colleagues who have been working each day to ensure a safe environment around the protests and minimize the disruption for everyone in our community. Those same people that our deputy vice chancellor is, giving a pat on the back to, were the ones that were the most aggressive. They were grabbing us by our necks, elbowing us in our necks, punching us in our chest, and that was happening all around. No one was forgiven. Everyone was a victim that day, and campus security and police really felt like they came into their own. They got to exercise the power and violence they always want to do. But yeah, I think you can expand on that as well, because
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, the moment that the university invited these police officers onto our campus, they consented to the brutalization of their students. And that was so evident that day when I saw my friends being dragged across the concrete, and I saw my friends yelling, "Stop, stop, what are you doing?" Only to be met with more violence, um, by these police officers that are even old enough to be our parents. It was horrifying. You know, one of my friends, their shirt was completely ripped in half. I saw one of my friends being punched in the chest. I saw my friend, her wrist was completely bruised from the way that a 6 foot tall, huge police officer was grabbing her and completely refused to let her go. And looking into his eyes, it was like it was not a human being anymore. It was just this person that was just hell bent on doing the most damage he could, against this young woman. I saw my friends being dragged across the floor, and in that moment you just feel completely helpless because what is there to do? At the end of the day, we are students. We're not trained in any sort of in any of this really. And I toward the end of it, I saw one of my friends. She was trying to pull a police officer off one of our other friends, and he grabbed her and swung her so hard that her head hit the police van, and she was concussed. So I think that that just completely shows the level of brutality that Merseyside police were willing to enact on these students who are protesting a genocide.
Yeah.
Just on that, the violence and the display of violence, is very clearly an act intended to intimidate us. It's not just intimidating us, it's an attempt to intimidate protest movements like us. And we know this because it's not an isolated event. Encampments across the country have faced an uptick in kind of violence from police. And I think it's important to say, without downplaying any of the awful things that happened that day, that our movement is only stronger the day after. We have so much more support. We had twice the amount of people that we normally have on camp because everyone from Liverpool, everyone who has been a student, everyone who's ever camped here came down and went, that was horrible. And I think it's a message to the uni that they need to understand is they after the violence, they cancelled negotiations. They went, we're not engaging with the protesters. And the point is, if there's any point where you don't want us protesting, it's the day after something like that, because we are far, far stronger after that event than we ever were before it.
And I think it's evident that we made the right people uncomfortable. I think, we confront them with facts as to how we confront the university with facts as to how they are complicit in the genocide of the Palestinian people, and they confront us with police brutality. And I think that just shows that the tide is turning and that change is coming, and that we will see a liberated
Thank you all
Palestine
so much
in our lifetime.
for watching this or listening to this. I am really grateful to the students who took the time to talk to me, but also to share their ideas with you and everyone else in the world. We have seen, at least in United States, that most of the times when student protests in solidarity with Gaza and Palestinians are covered, they are shown a certain way, mostly in negative way. And none of the mainstream media ever sits down and talks to the students and hears them out or gives them a chance to explain as to why they are in the streets on their university campuses protesting against the destruction of people of Gaza and Palestine. So this was one such opportunity for me to learn from these wonderful student activists, but also to share their thoughts, their ideas, their hopes and aspirations with you. Please let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions or queries or questions, please post them in the comments. I'm deeply grateful to the students, of course, and to you all for being a part of my life. Stay safe, stay strong, take care of each other, and I will now see you next time. Until then, peace and love.